A millionaire marries a McDonald's waitress on a bet and gets surprised when. Blake Harrison was always the most confident man in the room. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the United States, he accumulated success and wealth like no one else. At 35, his life seemed perfect: luxury mansions, sports cars, and the constant company of people eager to flatter him. For Blake, the world was a game of power and control, a game he always won. One Saturday afternoon, Blake was hanging out with some friends in one of the most unlikely places for someone of his status: the local McDonald's. It was an ironic stop, a way to entertain themselves by pretending to live an ordinary life. Sitting around a table at the back of the restaurant, his friends chatted casually, but as always, Blake dominated the conversation. "You've done it all, Blake," said Caleb Turner, one of his oldest friends, taking a bite of his burger. "Made millions, won over whoever you wanted, but I doubt you can win this next bet." Blake raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I'm listening." Caleb grinned, clearly having planned his provocation. "I bet you can't marry a woman who has absolutely nothing to do with our world. And I don't mean models or businesswomen. I'm talking about someone really ordinary." Blake frowned as the other friends exchanged amused glances. "What do you mean by ordinary?" "I mean," Caleb said, discreetly pointing at a waitress cleaning a nearby table, "I bet you can't win over and marry someone like her. That single mom, the waitress here at McDonald's. Let's see you bring someone like her into your world." Blake followed Caleb's gaze. The waitress in question was Rachel Miller, a 28-year-old who had worked at McDonald's for a while to support her 5-year-old daughter, Chloe. Rachel was quiet and hardworking, never letting the stress of difficult customers or the exhausting routine of a single mom affect her. To most people in Blake's circle, she would have been invisible. "You want me to marry the waitress?" Blake asked, with disbelief and a hint of amusement in his tone. "Exactly, and I'll give you $2 million if you manage it. No contracts, no schemes. It has to be a real marriage," Caleb said, his eyes gleaming with the challenge. $2 million was pocket change to Blake, but the challenge itself intrigued him. Blake Harrison never turned down a bet. For him, it wasn't about the money, it was about winning. And Rachel, with her simple life so far removed from his reality, seemed like the perfect opportunity for another victory. $2 million? Blake smiled, raising his soda cup. "This will be easy. Get the check ready, Caleb, because I'm going to win." His friends laughed, convinced they were witnessing the beginning of yet another triumph for the unstoppable Blake Harrison. Deep down, Blake felt a new sense of excitement. Rachel would be a different kind of challenge, and he liked challenges. Blake watched Rachel more closely as she cleaned the tables. Her light brown hair was tied in a ponytail, and she wore no noticeable makeup. There was something in her eyes that intrigued him, a mix of wariness and resilience. It was clear she worked hard to keep her life on track. When she approached to clear some empty cups, Blake decided to make his move. "Rachel, right?" She glanced at him briefly, her expression neutral. "Yes. Can I help you with something?" "Call me Blake," he said with a confident smile. "I don't think you've served me before." Rachel blinked, surprised by the remark. "I've worked here for months. You probably didn't notice." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Probably not, but that changes today. How about we grab a coffee sometime?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Sorry, I'm working." Blake didn't give up, keeping his smile. "Not now, of course, but you must get a day off, right? We could chat a little." Rachel stared at him for a few moments before replying, "I need to get back to work." And with that, she walked away. Blake felt a wave of frustration. She hadn't responded the way he expected, but that only made him want to try harder. Rachel wasn't like the other women he was used to charming with a few words. There was something about her resistance that challenged him, and Blake didn't shy away from challenges. As she returned to collect more empty cups and toss them in the trash, he kept his eyes on her. "I'm persistent, Rachel. You'll find that out. I'll keep asking until you say yes." She gave him a polite smile, unaffected by his charm. "Good luck with that." That response only motivated him more. What had started as a simple bet among friends now felt personal. Blake Harrison always got what he wanted, and he was determined to win Rachel, just like he had won every bet before. As Caleb and the others finished their meals, Blake gave Rachel one last glance before leaving. He knew that the next time he saw her, he would be more direct. If there was one thing he understood, it was that no one resisted his charm for long. And Rachel Miller would be no exception. Blake Harrison had never backed down from a challenge, especially after Caleb had raised the bet to $2 million. This wasn't just about the money. It was about pride. He was set on getting Rachel Miller, the McDonald's waitress, to accept his invitation and eventually marry him. With each passing day, Blake felt more focused on his goal. Deep down, he knew the bet was superficial, but the idea of being turned down bruised his ego. Let's have some fun with those who only read the comments. They won't get it. Type McDonald's in the comments. Only those who've made it this far will understand. On the following Tuesday, Blake returned to McDonald's at the same time. He watched Rachel as she attended to other customers. She was professional, always focused and quick. Something about her seriousness intrigued him. It was probably exactly what made her different from the women he usually met. Rachel seemed strong, capable, and completely uninterested in anything he had to offer. Blake was used to women trying to impress him or earn his attention. But Rachel? She seemed indifferent to it all. When Rachel came to his table to take his order, he intercepted her with a confident smile. "Hey, Rachel. I thought maybe you were expecting to see me again." She raised her eyebrows, not hiding her surprise. "Didn't know you came here so often." "Well, I think I'll start coming more often," he said playfully. "You know, great service and all." Rachel shot him a skeptical look and jotted down his order. But before she could leave, Blake decided to try once more. "So how about that coffee? Just to get to know each other better," he insisted. She studied him for a moment, clearly annoyed by his persistence, but she took a deep breath. "Look, I appreciate it, but I'm really busy. My life doesn't leave room for casual meetups." Blake realized that if he kept using a casual approach, she'd push him away even more. Changing tactics, he lowered his tone and said, "I get that you're busy. I promise I'm not here to make your life harder. I just want to get to know you better." She looked ready to turn him down again, but something in Blake's calm and serious expression made her hesitate. Finally, Rachel let out a small sigh and agreed. "All right, Blake, but it'll be a quick coffee. I don't have time for much more than that." It was progress. And for Blake, that was enough for now. He just needed a small opening to begin his plan, and now he had one. That same afternoon, they met at a nearby cafe. Rachel arrived on time, still in her work uniform and visibly uncomfortable with the situation. Blake, on the other hand, was completely at ease. They sat at a table in the back, away from the other customers, and he watched as she picked up the menu with little interest. "So, Rachel, what's your life like?" "How long have you worked there?" he asked, trying to sound friendly. She shrugged, keeping her tone reserved. "A few years. It's how I support my daughter, Chloe. I work a lot, but it's what I can do for now." Blake nodded, feeling slightly out of his element for the first time. He was used to conversations about investments, galas, and luxury vacations, but realizing that someone lived such a different reality surprised him. For Blake, work was something he commanded from an office. For Rachel, it was her lifeline. "Do you have any free time?" he asked, curious about how she managed everything. She let out a humorless laugh. "Not much, to be honest. When I'm not working, I'm with my daughter. That takes up most of my time." "And you? What's your story, Blake?" He smiled, knowing his answer might feel distant to her. "I'm the CEO of a tech company. I work a lot too, but, well, it's a bit of a different lifestyle." Rachel didn't react the way he expected. She just nodded, as if she had already figured as much. "I thought so. That's why I was surprised by your invitation. People like you don't usually mix with people like me." There was something about her honesty that bothered him. "Why do you say that? Do you think everyone's the same?" Blake asked, unsettled. For the first time, Rachel looked directly into his eyes. "It's not that I think everyone's the same. I just find it hard to understand what a wealthy, successful man could want with someone like me. You could choose anyone from your circle." Blake felt cornered by her question. He couldn't tell her the truth about the bet, so he gave the only answer he could. "Maybe that's exactly what interests me about you, Rachel. You're not part of that world, and that's rare for me." Rachel let out a sigh, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, Blake, I'll be honest. My priority is my daughter. She means everything to me, and I'm here because I think you're being genuine. But I don't have time for games." He nodded, and for a brief moment, he felt something shift within him. As committed as he was to the bet, He couldn't deny that there was something about Rachel that challenged him. She was real, straightforward, and unlike anyone he had ever met. "I understand, Rachel," he said softly. "I promise there are no games here." Rachel studied him once more, then finished her coffee and stood up. "Well, it was a quick coffee, like I said." Blake smiled. "How about we do this again sometime? Maybe a lighter conversation next time?" She looked at him, considering the offer. After a moment, she gave a small nod. "Maybe." As she walked away, Blake stayed behind, watching her disappear through the cafe doors. He had taken the first step, and now his curiosity about her grew with every encounter. Blake was used to achieving his goals quickly, and with Rachel Miller, he felt the same urgency. After that brief coffee, her image and the sincere words about her daughter stayed in his mind. The bet with Caleb still echoed in the background, but as the days passed, it felt more like a fleeting incentive. Something deeper in him wanted to understand Rachel, and even he couldn't explain this growing attraction. In the following weeks, Blake started showing up at McDonald's more often. He kept things low-key, making sure not to overdo it, but he seized every opportunity to exchange a few words with Rachel. Little by little, she got used to his presence, and their conversations became more personal, touching on details about both their lives. One afternoon, Blake realized it was time to take the bet to the next level. He knew that if he kept things casual with quick chats and coffee dates, Rachel wouldn't consider something more serious. He needed to make a bold move, something that would show he was genuinely interested. That calm afternoon at McDonald's, as Rachel arranged trays behind the counter, Blake approached her. "Rachel," he began, trying to sound as sincere as possible. "I've been thinking a lot about us. I know this might sound sudden, but what do you think about taking this seriously?" She looked at him, puzzled, her brow furrowing. Taking what seriously? Blake took a deep breath, knowing that being direct was his best chance. "Marriage." Rachel laughed involuntarily, stunned by the unexpected proposal. "Are you serious? I barely know you, Blake." "I know it sounds crazy," he admitted, doing his best to stay composed, "but I feel like we have something special, something I've never felt with anyone else. Maybe it's because you're not from my world. Maybe it's because I see something real in you, someone who truly lives a life with purpose." She shook her head, still in disbelief. "Are you really suggesting marriage with someone you hardly know? What kind of reality is that?" Blake realized he was losing control of the situation. He knew he needed to be more convincing. "I'm not joking, Rachel. I know I come from a very different world, and I know this might sound absurd, but I want to give you and Chloe a better life." Rachel took a deep breath, torn between the instinct to reject him and the strange attraction she felt toward him. It was hard to believe that someone with his lifestyle would be genuinely interested in her, but as she looked into his eyes, she felt a glimmer of hope. "I'm not asking for an answer right now," Blake said, sensing her hesitation. "Just think about it. I don't want to pressure you, but I believe we could make this work." Rachel studied him, trying to understand the intentions behind his words. "I'll think about it," she finally said before returning to her work, still perplexed. The following days were filled with reflection and doubt for Rachel. She kept questioning Blake's proposal. After all, he was a man from a world she didn't understand, and her own reality, as a single mother and waitress, seemed incompatible with the life Blake offered. However, the idea of marrying him, and what it could mean for her daughter, Chloe, stirred something inside her. As unlikely as it seemed, the proposal could offer a future she'd never be able to provide on her own. A week later, Blake showed up again at McDonald's. He waited for Rachel to finish her shift, and when she came out, he called her, smiling with a mix of confidence and nervousness. "Rachel, have you thought about what I asked?" She took a deep breath, her expression serious. "Do you really think this could work, Blake? We're from completely different worlds. I'm a waitress with a young daughter. My priority is her, and always will be. I'm not here for games." Blake nodded, pulling out a small velvet box he had prepared. Opening it, he revealed an elegant but simple ring that sparkled under the night's light. He knew anything too flashy would intimidate her, so he chose something that reflected sincerity. "Rachel, I'm serious," he said, holding the ring between his fingers. "I want you to see this as a chance for us to build something together. We could give Chloe a different kind of life. And if you say yes, I promise I will never let you down." Rachel's heart raced. The proposal felt surreal, but Blake's expression was so determined, so genuine, that for a moment she believed it. "Why me, Blake? With all your money and your world, why are you here asking me this?" she asked, still in disbelief. Blake smiled, reflecting on a truth he couldn't fully grasp himself. "Because you're different from anyone I've ever met. Because, maybe, for the first time, I see something real." She fell silent, her eyes on the ring. "This feels so unreal, but I can't ignore that I have a daughter to think about. Maybe I'm being foolish, but I'll accept, for Chloe's sake." Blake moved closer, slipping the ring onto her finger. "I promise I'll make this worth it, Rachel." She exhaled, still surprised by her decision. "All right, Blake, I'm trusting you." With that, Blake smiled, relieved, certain he was one step closer to winning the bet. For Rachel Miller, accepting Blake Harrison's marriage proposal felt surreal, but necessary. Ever since she became a mother, every decision she made had been for Chloe's well-being. And now, by taking this bold step, her goal was clear: to secure a safer future for her daughter. The transition into this new life happened quickly. Blake took care of everything with his usual efficiency, ensuring that Rachel and Chloe moved into his mansion. The house was grand, with high ceilings, luxurious furniture, and everything Rachel could never have imagined. Every corner exuded wealth, but to her, it felt cold and impersonal. Rachel tried to adjust, but the differences between their worlds were glaring. In those first days, she felt like a visitor in a life that wasn't hers. Blake, though considerate, kept a careful distance. He seemed genuinely interested in making her feel at home, but his endless meetings and responsibilities prevented a deeper connection. Their first dinner together at the mansion highlighted these differences. They sat at a long dining table, with Blake at the head, Rachel a few seats away, and Chloe between them. Blake watched Chloe with a mix of curiosity and unease. The little girl looked around, captivated by the silver cutlery and the sparkle of the crystal glasses. "Do you like it here, Chloe?" Blake asked, trying to start a conversation. Chloe nodded shyly. "Yes, it's big, like a princess's house." Rachel smiled at her daughter, trying to keep her grounded. "It sure is, sweetie, but remember, this is just a place for us to live. Our life is still the same." Blake picked up on the caution in Rachel's words, and wondered if she felt out of place. He tried to lighten the mood by sharing a childhood story about how he got lost in one of his family's many properties. But despite his efforts, Rachel seemed reserved, as if she was still trying to figure out her role in this new setting. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Rachel began to learn more and more about Blake's world. He was a man who lived for his work, surrounded by constant meetings and influential people. Meanwhile, Rachel spent most of her time caring for Chloe, supervising her school activities, and trying to settle into the new home. Blake made an effort to spend time with Rachel and Chloe between his meetings, but his presence often felt distant. He asked about Chloe's routine and tried to participate in family activities, but the disconnect between their lives was obvious. One afternoon, Rachel was helping Chloe with her homework when Blake walked into the living room and watched them for a few moments. There was a simplicity in the relationship between mother and daughter that he had never experienced, a natural and genuine closeness. "Need any help?" he asked, a bit awkwardly. Rachel looked at him, surprised. "You know anything about school homework?" He laughed, shaking his head. "Maybe not, but I can try." Rachel smiled, and for the first time, Blake felt like he had truly connected with her. He sat down next to them, trying to engage in Chloe's activity, and she giggled at his mistakes while answering the questions. That light-hearted moment felt like a small bridge between their very different worlds. But despite the small progress, Rachel remained skeptical of Blake's intentions. She knew their marriage hadn't started in the most conventional way and still felt like something between them was left unsaid. Blake, on the other hand, was beginning to experience an internal shift he hadn't expected. At first, it was all about pride, a bet to prove he could conquer any challenge. But now, Rachel and Chloe's presence was making him question the real purpose of it all. That same night, as Blake was getting ready for bed, he noticed Rachel sitting at the edge of the bed, lost in thought. "What's wrong?" he asked cautiously. She sighed, looking at him. "Blake, I think we need to understand what exactly we're doing here. We're not a normal couple. We don't have a story together. And even though you've been thoughtful, I feel like we're just trying to fit into something that might not work." He sat beside her, looking at her sincerely. "I understand, Rachel, but would you believe me if I said I'm trying to figure this out too? I want this to work. Even though we didn't start in the best way, we can build something real here." Rachel studied him in silence, not sure if she could trust his words. Everything about Blake seemed too perfect, and she knew his intentions weren't always clear. But despite her doubts, she wanted to believe that, perhaps, they could build something real. Maybe, over time, he could learn to appreciate the simple life she valued so much. "For now, I think we can just try," she said with a sigh. "But I need you to be honest with me, Blake. If this isn't real, if this is just an experiment, I'd rather end it now." He nodded, his expression serious. "It's real, Rachel. I can promise you that." His response gave Rachel some peace of mind, but the words felt vague. Building a life together was proving to be far more complicated than she had imagined. But at that moment, she decided to give Blake and herself a chance. As the weeks went by, something unexpected started to happen to Blake Harrison. Living with Rachel and Chloe was affecting him in ways he never could have predicted. From the start, he knew this marriage was just a bet, a challenge to prove his ability to win. However, the more time he spent with Rachel and her daughter, the more he found himself changed. Let's play a game with those who only read the comments. They won't understand. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who've read this far will get it. Chloe's smile and the simplicity with which Rachel approached life stirred an admiration in him that went far beyond any relationship he had ever known. Material achievements, once so important, now seemed empty compared to the authenticity and dedication Rachel showed every day. The way she cared for her daughter and managed everything at home revealed a strength he never found within his social circle. One evening, while they were having dinner together, Blake realized he was opening up to Rachel more than ever before. He talked about his childhood, the weight of family expectations, and the pressures of being a young CEO. Rachel listened attentively, and he felt like, for the first time, he didn't have to prove anything. He could just be himself. "I don't think I've ever had anyone I could really talk to about these things," he admitted, surprised by his own vulnerability. Rachel smiled softly. "Sometimes, Blake, you just need someone to listen, someone who doesn't expect anything in return." That simple statement hit him hard. He realized how accustomed he was to relationships based on interests, where everything was always an exchange of favors, status, or power. But with Rachel, things felt different. She expected nothing from him except honesty, and that completely disarmed him. Blake's change deepened over time. Now, he found himself looking for ways to spend more time with Rachel and Chloe, savoring the small moments in daily life that he would have once overlooked. One weekend, he surprised them with a trip to the park, something that felt ordinary to him, but was an exciting experience for Chloe. Chloe ran across the grass, laughing and shouting as Blake tried to keep up with her. Rachel watched them, smiling warmly, and Blake found himself caught up in the moment. He had never felt such lightness, such simple joy. Deep down, he began to question the real reason for their marriage. That initial bet no longer made sense, and he knew that he wasn't there for money or pride anymore, but because he felt something genuine. During the outing, Blake had a heartfelt conversation with Rachel while Chloe played nearby. "Rachel, I know we started this in a strange way, but I'm trying to figure out what's happening to me." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "I never thought I'd feel this connected. Spending time with you and Chloe has become the best part of my day," he admitted, glancing away. "It sounds crazy, but you and she have made me see life differently." Rachel smiled, slightly surprised but still cautious. "I know our beginning was complicated, but I feel like there's something special here too, Blake. But we need to be honest with each other. If this isn't real, I'd rather not continue." Blake took her hand, looking into her eyes. "It's real, Rachel. I've never been so sure about anything in my life." As the days turned into months, Blake's transformation became even more visible. He started distancing himself from the friends who had encouraged the bet and even rearranged his work schedule to spend more time at home. Caleb and the others noticed the changes and soon began questioning him about what was going on. One night, over dinner, Caleb confronted him directly. "Blake, what's going on with you? You're pulling away from everyone and changing completely." Blake took a deep breath, tired of his friend's insinuations. I think I'm realizing what really matters." Caleb laughed, disbelieving. "Is this all because of the bet? I thought it was just a joke." Blake felt irritation rising. "I bet you'd find this funny, but it's not a joke to me anymore. I want things to work with Rachel." Caleb studied him for a moment. "So it's serious then?" "Yes, it's serious. And if you can't understand that, maybe you should focus on your own life," Blake said, ending the conversation. That night marked the end of his friendship with Caleb. Blake knew he could no longer maintain the same friendships, and severing ties with that social circle felt like the final link to the superficial life he once led. Now he understood that he wanted an authentic life with Rachel and Chloe, even if it meant leaving behind the world he had always known. When he got home that evening, Rachel noticed that he seemed troubled. Sitting together in the living room, she listened as he opened up about how lost he felt, distant from everything that had once seemed important to him. "I feel like I'm drifting away from everyone, like everything I used to value is slipping away," he said with a deep sigh. Rachel placed her hand over his. "Maybe you're just finding something more real, Blake. Sometimes we need to get lost to find ourselves." That conversation was the final push Blake needed. For the first time, he was ready to leave everything behind and move forward with Rachel. He knew that with her, he had found not only true love, but also a way of life that fulfilled him in ways he had never imagined. The months spent with Rachel and Chloe brought Blake countless discoveries. The transformation he was undergoing was evident not just in his actions, but in how he saw the world around him. He spent more time at home, focused on simple activities, and avoided the social circles he once thought were essential. But one autumn morning, an unexpected discovery brought everything rushing back, stirring memories Blake had hoped to forget. He was in his home office, reviewing some contracts, when an old document caught his attention. It was a news article about a past acquisition his company had made, a small factory that had been shut down years ago. As he glanced at the date, memories of those events resurfaced. He remembered that, at the time, he had ordered the factory's closure to cut costs and increase profits. To him, it was just a business decision, but for many people, that decision had changed everything. Restless, Blake delved deeper into the aftermath of the factory's closure and discovered that hundreds of employees had lost their jobs. The town where the factory was located had suffered economically, forcing many families to start over from scratch. Back then, he hadn't thought about the people behind the numbers, only about the impact the decision would have on profits. But as he read through the report and saw the affected town, a cold truth struck him. It was Rachel's hometown. With trembling hands, he began to piece the story together and realized that the decision he had made years ago had directly affected her life. That was why Rachel had ended up working at McDonald's, struggling to raise Chloe on her own. Even though it wasn't intentional, he had caused her suffering. The discovery shook Blake deeply. He spent the rest of the day unable to focus on anything else. The thought that he was, in part, responsible for Rachel and Chloe's heart consumed him with guilt and regret. But how could he tell her? How could he admit he had been the cause of so much pain? For days, the revelation tormented him, and the distance between him and Rachel began to grow. She noticed that he seemed distant and preoccupied, but Blake tried to hide his emotional turmoil, afraid of how she might react to the truth. However, he knew he couldn't keep the secret forever. Finally, on a quiet evening, Blake decided it was time to tell Rachel everything. They were sitting in the living room after Chloe had gone to bed, and the atmosphere was calm. He knew it was the right moment. "Rachel," he began, trying to find the right words, "I need to talk to you about something important, something from my past." She looked at him, surprised by the serious tone in his voice. "What is it, Blake? Did something happen?" He took a deep breath, and the words started to come out. "Do you remember the factory you used to work at before we met? The one that was shut down?" Rachel nodded, her face clouded with sadness at the memory of that difficult time. "Yes, I remember. It was a really hard time. I was pregnant with Chloe and had to face it all alone." Blake looked away, feeling ashamed. "Rachel, it was me. I was the one who ordered the factory to close." The words hung in the air, and Rachel's expression shifted from confusion to shock. She blinked, as if trying to process what she had just heard, then stared at him with a mix of disbelief and hurt. "You did that?" she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "Yes," he answered, his voice low and filled with guilt. "At the time, it was just a business decision. I was focused on profits and I didn't think about the people it would affect. Rachel, I'm so sorry. If I had known how it would impact you, I would never have made that choice." Rachel slowly pulled away, trying to absorb the weight of his confession. Every struggle, every night she had fought to support her daughter and hold on to her dignity, was now tied to him. The betrayal felt almost unbearable. She took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. "So all of this, everything we've been through, you are the reason I ended up in that situation? The reason I had to work as a waitress and fight to raise my daughter. And now what, Blake? Do you expect me to just forget all of it?" Her voice cut him like a knife. He tried to move closer, but she stepped back, her eyes burning with anger and sorrow. "Rachel, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to make things right. I want you to forgive me." "Forgive you?" she laughed bitterly. "How can I forgive someone who destroyed my life and my stability and then decided to show up as some kind of hero? This is selfish, Blake, and I don't know if I can forgive you for that." Blake felt a deep ache hearing those words, but he knew he deserved them. His past had caught up with him, and the price he had to pay was steep. He watched her stand up and head toward the bedroom, every step weighed down by hurt and resentment. "Rachel?" he called, his voice low and shaky. "I would do anything to make this right. You and Chloe matter to me. I don't want to lose you." She stopped and looked at him for a moment. "Blake, you didn't win us over with pretty words or empty promises. I stayed because I believed you were being sincere. But now I see that maybe all of this is just another one of your business deals." And with that, she turned and walked into the bedroom, leaving Blake alone in the living room, surrounded by a guilt that felt impossible to overcome. He knew words wouldn't be enough. If he wanted to earn Rachel's trust again and rebuild what they had, he would need to prove, through genuine actions, that he had truly changed. After the devastating revelation about the factory closure, the tension between Blake and Rachel became almost unbearable. Rachel could barely look at him, and their conversations, once filled with warmth and laughter, were now marked by silence and hurt. Blake felt lost, weighed down by guilt, every time he saw the disappointment in Rachel's eyes. The next morning, Rachel was still processing the whirlwind of emotions. She tried to hide her pain for Chloe's sake, keeping calm in front of her daughter, but the anger and sense of betrayal lingered. Knowing that Blake was responsible for all the struggles and sacrifices she had endured wasn't something she could easily forget. Now, their entire relationship seemed built on a cruel irony. Life in the mansion carried on, but Blake was visibly shaken. He kept trying to connect with Rachel, but every attempt was met with an invisible wall. Deep down, he knew he had to give her the time she needed, and in the meantime, he promised himself that he would find a way to make things right, not through promises or apologies, but through meaningful actions. A few days later, during dinner, Blake gathered the courage to start a more direct conversation. Sitting at the table, his voice trembling, he began, "Rachel, I know I hurt you, and I understand if you can't forgive me, but would you give me a chance to show that I've changed?" She looked at him coldly, her eyes shining with a mix of pain and indignation. "You want a chance, Blake? You took everything from me, and now you want a chance to prove you're a good person? Don't you think that's just a little too convenient?" He took a deep breath, fighting the urge to despair. "I know you're right to feel hurt, and I deserve your anger. But, Rachel, since we met, I've changed. I want to be better, for you and for Chloe. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness." Rachel shook her head, her expression filled with exasperation. "It's too late for that, Blake. I let you into my life and my daughter's life because I believed you were different. But in the end, you're just like everyone else I've ever known." She stood up, leaving him alone at the table, crushed under the weight of guilt and regret. Blake knew that words wouldn't change anything. He needed to do something more, something that would truly show his determination and commitment to making things right. In the following days, Blake made a decision. He began searching for people who, like Rachel, had been affected by the factory's closure. He traveled to the town where the factory had been and spoke with former employees, listening to their stories and the hardships they had faced. It was painful to confront the consequences of his impersonal decisions, but he knew he had to face the reality he had created. After hearing dozens of stories, Blake decided to establish a support fund for the factory's former employees, setting aside a significant portion of his fortune to help their families and create new opportunities for them. He knew this wouldn't fix the past, but it was a first step toward showing that he was genuinely committed to change. When Blake returned home, Rachel was still avoiding him, but he was determined to talk to her. One evening, as Rachel finished putting Chloe to bed, Blake waited for her in the living room. As soon as she entered, Blake called out to her, his voice calm but steady. "Rachel, I know you're hurt, but I need to tell you what I've been doing. I've been trying to make things right." She folded her arms, skeptical. "And how exactly do you plan to fix the past, Blake? With money? That won't undo what you did." "I know it won't," he said, holding his composure. "But I went there. I spoke with the former employees, listened to what they went through, and I'm creating a fund to help them rebuild their lives. I know this doesn't erase what I did, but it's my way of trying to make up for the pain I caused." Rachel watched him in silence, surprised by the sincerity and commitment in his words. Even though the wound was still fresh, she saw a glimpse of genuine remorse in Blake's eyes. As much as she didn't want to admit it, his effort to right the past began to chip away at her anger, leaving behind a quiet uncertainty. That night, as Blake remained in the living room, Rachel returned to the bedroom with a heart torn in two. She couldn't bring herself to forgive him just yet, but she also couldn't ignore the fact that he seemed sincere in his attempt to change. The months they had spent together had revealed a side of Blake that seemed far removed from the man who had shut down the factory. But the weight of the past still stood as a difficult barrier to overcome. The next day, Rachel decided to talk to him again. She found him in his office, focused on some notes. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, but she knew she needed answers. "Blake," she began, catching his attention. "I heard what you said about the support fund. I know you're trying to make things right, but it's still hard for me to understand." He looked at her with a serious expression. "Rachel, I know I may never deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'll do whatever it takes. I'm willing to change my entire life if that's what it takes to build something real between us." She watched him in silence, absorbing every word. Even though the pain hadn't disappeared, she saw a different man standing before her. Maybe the Blake in front of her really was changing. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Blake, but maybe we can see what happens," she said softly. Her cautious response gave Blake a glimmer of hope. He knew the road ahead would be long and that earning her forgiveness wouldn't be easy, but he was prepared to face any challenge to prove he deserved a second chance. Before they could continue their conversation, the office door burst open, and Caleb walked in with the same sarcastic grin he always wore. "Oh, so you two are still here? Cozy together?" Blake frowned, surprised by the interruption. "Caleb, now's not a good time." Caleb ignored the tension in the room, glancing at Rachel with amusement. "So Rachel, did Blake tell you about the big bet?" Rachel looked confused, turning to Blake, who felt a wave of panic rising. "Caleb, stop." But Caleb laughed, continuing as if he hadn't heard. "You see, Blake and I bet a small fortune on whether he could marry you. $2 million, actually. Didn't he tell you? What a shame. I really thought you two were becoming a real couple." Rachel's expression shifted to a mixture of shock and pain. She stepped back, feeling the ground collapse beneath her feet as she stared at Blake, waiting for him to deny it. But his silence confirmed everything. "Blake, is that true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Rachel, it wasn't supposed to be like this. At first, it was a bet, but I changed. I started to care, really care." He tried to explain, but his words felt hollow. She stepped back, her gaze devastated. "First, you destroyed my life with that factory, and now I find out our marriage was just a bet." Rachel left the room in tears, and Blake knew at that moment that he might have lost everything all at once because of his own lies. Rachel walked out of the mansion with a shattered heart. Caleb's revelation was the final drop in a well already filled with pain and betrayal. To her, every moment spent with Blake now felt like it had been built on a lie. Not only had he ruined her past, but he had deceived her again, promising love and change, while their marriage had been nothing more than a game, a bet for his entertainment and pride. Blake stood by as Rachel disappeared into the night, every step she took echoing his failure. He wanted to chase after her, to explain, to tell her how much he had changed, and that the bet had meant nothing after he truly got to know her. But the words felt weak, incapable of undoing the brutal truth she had just uncovered. In the days that followed, Rachel kept her distance, ignoring every attempt Blake made to contact her. She needed time to process, to understand how she had trusted and opened up to someone who never deserved her trust from the beginning. Her heart, still aching from the factory's closure, now carried the bitterness of knowing that every gesture of affection from Blake could have been just another step in a bet. Meanwhile, Blake was devastated. The mansion, once a symbol of his success, now felt empty, every corner echoing with Rachel's and Chloe's absence. Every message he left on Rachel's phone went unanswered. He knew he needed something far more meaningful than an apology to reach her again. Determined to win her back, Blake searched for a way to prove that his feelings were real. Instead of relying on money or power, he decided to part with the thing that meant the most to him: his company. He realized that to deserve a chance with Rachel and Chloe, he needed to break away from everything that connected him to the man he used to be. He spent days in quiet negotiations with investors and advisors, facing questions and pressure, but he stood firm. Finally, when the transactions were completed, he was just Blake, no company, no status. He wanted to show Rachel that his life no longer needed to revolve around power and status, that he was willing to start fresh beside her. With the papers signed, he headed to a friend's house where he knew Rachel and Chloe were staying. He felt the weight of the moment and waited nervously as she decided whether to talk to him. Finally, she appeared at the door, her face marked by fatigue and distrust. "Rachel, I know you may not believe me, but I came to tell you something important," he started, unable to look directly into her eyes. "I sold the company, the place where it all began, where I made the decision to close the factory. I'm no longer part of it." She looked at him in surprise, hesitant. "Blake, I don't understand what this changes. Do you think that by getting rid of everything, the lies will disappear?" "No, Rachel, I know this doesn't erase what I did," he replied, his voice shaking. "But I realized I couldn't be with you while still tied to that life. I want you to know that today, my priority is you and Chloe. I'm willing to build something real, something clean, even if I have to start from scratch." Rachel listened intently, her eyes filled with doubt and a glimmer of hope. She took a deep breath, her emotions mixed with caution. "You had every opportunity to be honest from the start. Every promise, every word of affection feels empty now." Blake nodded, accepting the harsh truth of her words. "I know I may never deserve your forgiveness, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to regain your trust. Believe me, Rachel, I've changed. And this change is for you, for Chloe, because I understand what really matters." She looked at him in silence, weighing the sincerity on his face. Part of Rachel still loved him, but the betrayal was a heavy burden to bear. She needed time and space to decide if she wanted to open her heart to him again. That night, after their long conversation, Rachel went back inside, while Blake, feeling a mix of relief and fear, returned home. He knew he had done everything he could up to that moment. The decision now rested solely with Rachel and her ability to forgive. In the following days, Blake kept his distance but continued to send occasional messages to Rachel, always careful and respectful of the space she had requested. He didn't pressure her. Instead, he decided that while he waited, he would rebuild his life with the values she had taught him: simplicity, empathy, and honesty. Finally, after weeks of reflection, Rachel reached out to him. She agreed to meet for one last conversation. Sitting together, she looked at him and said calmly, "I won't pretend that what you did didn't hurt me. I know you're trying, Blake, and I see that you've changed. But for me, rebuilding that trust will be a long and difficult process." "I accept that," he replied, his voice steady. "I'm willing to wait as long as it takes, because for the first time, I feel like I've found something real, and I won't give up on it." Rachel nodded, tears threatening to fall. Despite all the difficulties, she decided to give the man Blake was trying to become a chance, not for what he had, but for who he was now, finally showing he could change. Rachel felt torn between the love she had developed for Blake and the weight of the wounds he had caused. She had decided to give him a chance, but she knew it wouldn't be easy to rebuild trust. Since their last conversation, Blake had shown patience and sincerity, but Rachel understood she would need more than gestures to believe again. Every step would be slow, and any mistake could undo their progress. Blake understood that he couldn't rush the process. He kept in frequent contact, took care of Rachel and Chloe's small needs, and showed genuine concern for both of them. Rachel noticed he was truly trying, but doubts about the bet and the lies still haunted her. Deep down, she feared that everything was temporary, just another promise Blake wouldn't be able to keep. A few weeks later, Blake invited Rachel and Chloe for a trip to a park he had discovered near the city. He planned a simple picnic with food he prepared himself, something he knew Rachel would appreciate. When they arrived, Rachel was surprised by the simplicity of the moment, so different from the extravagant style she had known in Blake. Seeing this more human side of him brought a new perspective, and for a brief moment she felt light, almost forgetting the scars. As Chloe ran and played with a ball, Blake and Rachel sat on a bench, watching her. "Thank you for coming," he said, breaking the silence. "I know you're being patient with me." She smiled lightly, still cautious. "I'm just trying to understand what's really changed, Blake, but I have to admit, since you got rid of the company, I've seen a side of you I didn't know before." Blake nodded, his eyes fixed on Chloe as she played. "I realized that world, with all the wealth and power games, didn't bring me happiness. You and Chloe, you brought something real into my life. I've understood that I need much less to be happy." Rachel listened, and little by little, she felt the weight of her hurts lighten. The authenticity in Blake's words was clear, and she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth this time. During the outing, Blake suggested a simple guessing game to make Chloe laugh, and as Rachel watched their interaction, she saw how genuine he was with the girl. Chloe was beaming, and with every smile from her daughter, Rachel felt something inside her soften. It was as if the Blake she had known at the beginning, the arrogant, self-centered man, was fading away, making room for someone much more human. By the end of the day, when they were ready to head home, Chloe fell asleep in the back seat of the car. Blake, driving calmly, looked at Rachel and said, "I know this was just one day, and it doesn't erase anything I've done, but I hope this can be the start of something new between us." She took a deep breath, thinking about everything they had been through. "I can't promise it will be easy, Blake, but if you keep this up, maybe one day I can trust again." He nodded, feeling a gentle relief, like a small light in the middle of a long darkness. He knew Rachel's forgiveness would be a slow and difficult journey, but her response meant there was still hope. The following weeks were a gradual process of rediscovery. Rachel remained cautious, but slowly. The moments with Blake and Chloe began to fill her life with more lightness. They started meeting regularly, and each day revealed more of the new person Blake was striving to be. He shared simple plans, talked about the volunteer work he had begun doing with families in the city, and showed genuine interest in Chloe's school activities. Rachel saw that he was committed to changing, and that made a huge difference in her heart. She still remembered the betrayal and the bet, but Blake's consistent actions seemed to gradually dispel that pain. He was becoming the present father Chloe had never had, and the man Rachel had always wanted, though she had thought it impossible to find. Finally, on a calm evening, while they were together at her house, Rachel decided it was time to say something she had been holding back since the start of this second chance. "Blake," she began with a hesitant look, "I want you to know that it still hurts. What you did with the factory, the bet, it's not something easy to forget." He looked at her in silence, waiting, his heart heavy. "But," she continued, taking a breath, "I believe you're changing. And, despite everything, I'm willing to try too. I just need you to be sincere from now on. I can't handle another disappointment. I can't let Chloe go through this again." Blake took her hand, feeling emotional. "Rachel, I promise nothing will be like it was before. I'm here for both of you, and that will never change." She smiled, touched. For the first time in a long while, she felt she could trust again. It wasn't a total forgiveness, but it was a start, a real possibility for rebuilding. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she was willing to face the journey alongside Blake, trusting that the man in front of her was sincere and determined to prove his worth. The new beginning between Blake and Rachel was built carefully. With every conversation and every act of kindness, weeks turned into months, and during that time, their relationship matured genuinely. Rachel still held on to some reservations, but Blake's sincere displays, his support, and constant presence helped her trust him more and more. Chloe, for her part, already saw Blake as part of her life and barely hid how much she liked him. Over time, Blake became a solid father figure for the girl, someone she knew would be there to support her in everything. The trust between him and Rachel was built slowly. Blake respected Rachel's boundaries, careful not to promise more than he could deliver, always showing his commitment through his actions. He dedicated himself to the support fund for former factory workers, actively participated in Chloe's school needs, and invested his time in activities that brought purpose and meaning to his life. His conversations with Rachel grew deeper and more honest, and he finally felt at peace with the simplicity he had once resisted accepting. On a cold December night, Blake invited Rachel and Chloe over for a Christmas dinner at his home, which was now much more modest after selling his company. The table was set simply, but the joy and peace in the atmosphere made the gathering special. Chloe, with her childlike enthusiasm, opened the first present, laughing and running around the house, while Blake and Rachel watched, smiling. Rachel looked at Blake, the warmth of the moment lighting up his face. "These months have been good, Blake. I think we've built something real, something I never thought could exist." He smiled, taking her hand across the table. "Rachel, I've never been this happy. Everything I thought I needed has been replaced by this. By you, by Chloe, by our life together. Thank you for giving me this second chance." She sighed, feeling the emotion of his words. "You've shown me that change is possible, Blake, and I believe that today you are the man who deserves to be by our side." They spent the evening talking about the future, sharing dreams and plans for a simple yet meaningful life. Blake told her about a community project he planned to invest in, something he wanted to start to help struggling families, inspired by what he had learned from Rachel and Chloe. At the beginning of the following year, Blake took an important and unexpected step. He proposed to Rachel, this time in a true and honest way. He asked for her hand in a small ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family, where he committed, with an open heart, to being the partner and father that Chloe and Rachel deserved. As he looked at Rachel, while they exchanged vows, Blake knew that this time, his commitment wasn't driven by pride or competition, but by the genuine love he felt. Rachel accepted, smiling with tears in her eyes, knowing that after all the suffering, she had finally found someone who truly understood and valued her. She felt ready to start anew, free from the shadows of the past and with sincere hope for the future. Life from then on was marked by small moments of genuine happiness. Blake continued his work on the community project, while Rachel dedicated herself to helping other women who, like her, had faced hardships. Chloe, now surrounded by love and stability, grew up happy, knowing she had a family that supported her through everything. 1 year after their wedding, Rachel and Blake received news that deeply moved them. They were expecting a baby. The arrival of this new member brought even more joy to the couple. For Blake, it was the realization of a dream he hadn't even imagined he had. The moment he held his baby for the first time, tears of happiness streamed down his face. Rachel, emotional, watched the tenderness with which he held the child, knowing their family was finally complete. Rachel knew that after so much suffering, she was living the fresh start she had always dreamed of for herself, for Chloe, and for the child she now had with Blake. This new life, built on sincerity and love, was everything she had ever wanted, and by Blake's side, she felt whole. Blake squeezed her hand, smiling. "Thank you for believing in me, Rachel, for giving me the chance to be a better person." She looked at him, returning the smile. "Thank you for proving I was right to believe." As they walked together, now as a united and complete family, Blake knew that the bet, pride, and money had been replaced by something infinitely more valuable: true love and the certainty of a fresh start. Did Rachel do the right thing by forgiving and trusting Blake again? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you think. Your input is very important to us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more narratives like this. Thank you for watching. A lonely millionaire makes a marriage proposal to an overweight and poor woman, but days later she was surprised to discover the reason. Jacob Miller had always been a man of few words and many possessions. At 50 years old, he owned one of the largest fortunes in the country, built through real estate investments and a network of successful businesses. However, despite all the money and power he had, Jacob was a deeply lonely man. He lived in an isolated mansion, surrounded by security guards, but without friends or family who visited often. Over the years, Jacob had lost trust in people. Friends turned out to be interested only in his wealth, and his romantic relationships never worked out, always marked by superficiality and greed. So, he began to prefer solitude. His days were filled with work and financial transactions, but at night, the vast silence of his mansion echoed the lack of purpose in his life. Everything began to change on an otherwise ordinary day. Jacob had been feeling exhausted for weeks, something he attributed to stress. But when the symptoms intensified, constant fatigue, weight loss, and frequent dizziness, he decided to see a doctor. He didn't expect that this visit would change the course of his life. Sitting in the cold examination room, Jacob barely paid attention to the charts and tests the doctor showed him. His mind was trapped by those words that echoed like thunder in his ears. "Jacob, you're very ill. The disease is serious and progressive. The time you have left is uncertain." Jacob, who always controlled everything in his life with precision, suddenly found himself powerless in the face of his fate. He stared at the doctor with the same coldness he used to close deals, but inside, the reality hit him deeply. He never thought time could be an enemy. He always believed he had control over his future, but now he faced a cruel truth. That night, sitting in his luxurious office, Jacob reflected on his life. The fortune he had built with so much effort now seemed like an empty burden. He had no heirs, and the idea of leaving everything to a foundation or a distant nephew who never visited him didn't appeal to him. He wanted his fortune to go to someone who truly valued it, someone who had fought hard in life, not to maintain a luxurious lifestyle, but to overcome the daily challenges that life imposed. Jacob spent hours thinking. In recent months, whenever he went to the local cafe, he had noticed a woman who deeply intrigued him. Emily Johnson. An overweight woman of modest appearance, but despite the apparent hardships, she always seemed to smile. He watched her interact with other customers, always with a positive attitude, despite the judgmental looks she received. It was clear that her life wasn't easy, but something in her resilience earned Jacob's admiration. He knew that Emily faced prejudice every day, something Jacob with his status had never experienced. Yet she remained strong, working hard and supporting herself with dignity. While the rich people around him lived in a bubble of comfort, Emily seemed to face real challenges without complaining. At that moment, Jacob knew what he needed to do. He didn't want his fortune to be wasted on someone who didn't deserve it. He wanted to leave it to someone he truly admired. And that person was Emily. But how could he approach her without seeming strange or self-interested? Jacob decided that simply leaving his fortune to Emily wasn't enough. He wanted to get to know her, understand her struggle, and offer her an opportunity that would change her life in an unexpected way. And more than that, he wanted her to know that his choice wasn't charity, it was respect. He admired her, and that admiration led him to make an unexpected and bold decision. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose, Jacob decided that the next day he would approach Emily. His time was running out, but he wanted to do something meaningful before he left. Something that finally gave his life a sense of meaning. The next morning, when Jacob entered the cafe, his eyes automatically searched for Emily. There she was, as always, serving at the counter. But that day, Jacob wasn't just a silent observer. He needed to talk to her. His heart raced, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He approached the counter, and when Emily saw him, the professional smile she always wore remained. But now, there was a quiet curiosity in her eyes. Jacob had never exchanged more than a few polite words with her, but today would be different. "Can I help you with something, Mr. Miller?" Emily asked, always polite but surprised to see him there so early in the morning when he usually came later, alone, with a newspaper. "Actually, yes. Could you join me at a table when you have a moment?" Jacob said, trying not to sound anxious, but unable to hide the urgency in his voice. Emily hesitated for a moment. It wasn't every day that a customer, especially someone like Jacob Miller, asked her something like that. She knew he was an important man, always well-dressed and serious. But why did he want to talk to her? "Sure, Mr. Miller. I'll just finish up here, and I'll be right with you." As Emily finished serving the last customers, Jacob sat at a table in the corner, watching the cafe's activity with disguised impatience. He knew what he was about to do was unusual, but he also knew he didn't have time to waste. His health was deteriorating quickly, and he needed to act while he still could. A few minutes later, Emily approached the table. She looked a bit nervous, unsure of what to expect. "So, how can I help you, Mr. Miller?" She sat across from him, curious but cautious. Jacob looked at her, taking a deep breath before beginning. "Emily, I know this might sound strange, but there's something I need to tell you. I've been watching you for some time, and before that sounds alarming, let me explain." He tried to smile, but he knew that what he was about to say would change the direction of the conversation. Emily raised her eyebrows, surprised but remained polite. "Watching me? What do you mean?" Jacob straightened in his chair, his hands trembling slightly. "I admire your strength, Emily. I see how you handle what life throws at you. The way you face prejudice, financial struggles, and yet you keep your dignity and kindness. That's something I rarely see, especially in the world I've lived in for so long, and that's why I wanted to speak with you today." Emily, surprised and slightly uncomfortable, just nodded, not sure what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. I don't know what to say. No one really notices those things." "I notice," Jacob said quickly, "and that's why I'm here. Emily, I'm gravely ill, and the truth is, I don't have much time left." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink into the silence that followed. Emily froze for a moment. That wasn't what she expected to hear. I'm so sorry, Mr. Miller. That's terrible. But why are you telling me this?" Jacob knew this was the decisive moment. He looked deeply into her eyes, trying to convey the sincerity of what he was about to say. "I don't have any heirs, Emily. I have no one to share what I've built. And I've decided that I don't want to leave my fortune in the hands of people who don't deserve it. I want to leave it to someone who truly understands what it means to fight through life's challenges. And Emily, I want that person to be you." Emily blinked, shocked. This didn't make sense. How could he want to leave everything to her? "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, but I don't understand. Why me? There are so many people who could." Jacob gently interrupted. "Because you're different, Emily. You don't give up. I've watched you, and I see how you face life head-on, without complaining, without letting others' judgments bring you down. You're the person I know would do something meaningful with what I leave behind." Emily shook her head, trying to process everything. "But this is crazy. I'm not anyone important. I just do what I need to survive. I'm not like you. I'm not a millionaire. I wouldn't know how to handle something like this." Jacob smiled softly, his tone becoming gentle. "That's exactly why I chose you. You know the value of things, Emily, and that's what matters." Emily stayed silent, the weight of his words falling on her like a storm. Could this be real? How could such an offer come out of nowhere? And why her? But one thing was clear. Jacob Miller was serious. And now, Emily's life was about to change in a way she could never have imagined. Jacob slowly stood up, feeling the fatigue in his body, but relieved that he had said what needed to be said. "You don't need to decide now. Just think about it. I'll be here, waiting for your answer." Emily watched him leave the cafe, still stunned, not knowing how to react. What had he just proposed? This couldn't be real, could it? She knew she needed time to process everything, but one thing was certain. Nothing would be the same. Jacob left the cafe feeling strangely relieved, though his mind was full of uncertainties. As he crossed the busy streets of the city, he reflected on how the conversation with Emily had gone. The fear of sounding absurd or overly charitable still lingered in his thoughts, but something inside him told him he had made the right choice. He had finally taken the first step to do something meaningful before time ran out. Back at his mansion, the usual loneliness surrounded him. But this time, he didn't feel the same emptiness. Instead, his mind was occupied, thinking about Emily and what she might be pondering now. He knew her decision wouldn't be easy. She was probably feeling confused, and who wouldn't be? The proposal he made was as unusual as it was bold, and even he, who was used to making risky decisions, knew he had risked everything by approaching a stranger with such a peculiar request. In the days that followed, Jacob stayed away from the cafe. He thought it would be better to give Emily some space and time to process what had happened. but he couldn't stop wondering how she was feeling. He knew she was a strong woman, but even the most resilient people needed time to deal with big changes. Emily, on the other hand, couldn't get Jacob out of her mind. His proposal seemed to have turned her life upside down. Not just because of what he offered, a fortune she had never dreamed of, but because of how he saw her. For Emily, being admired by someone like Jacob was something she had never experienced before. He saw more in her than just her physical appearance or financial circumstances. He saw her strength, her struggles, and that touched her deeply. At the same time, fear consumed her. What if it was just another trap from life? Life had already been so hard on her. The idea of trusting someone and then being hurt or disappointed again made her hesitate. Emily knew she needed to talk to someone about it, but who? She didn't have many friends, and her mother, who was now very sick, was the only person she usually confided in. That night, after finishing her shift at the cafe, Emily went to visit her mother in the hospital. The debilitating illness that had taken over her mother's body was a constant reminder of their financial struggles. The medical bills were overwhelming, and Emily fought every month to pay them, sacrificing her own comfort and well-being. As she sat by her mother's bedside, watching her tired face, Emily found herself reflecting on what Jacob had offered. Her mother's weak voice interrupted her thoughts. "Emily, dear, you're so quiet today. What's going on?" Emily hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to worry her mother, but at the same time, she needed to share what was happening. "Mom, something strange happened this week. A man, he made me an offer I never imagined. He said he's seriously ill and wants to leave his entire fortune to me." Emily's mother looked at her with wide eyes, shocked. What do you mean, dear? Who is this man?" Emily took a deep breath and explained about Jacob Miller, the millionaire she served at the cafe, and how he had approached her with this unexpected proposal. After she finished telling the story, her mother remained silent for a moment, trying to absorb what she had just heard. He wants to leave everything to you?" Her mother's voice was incredulous. "That's unbelievable, Emily. Have you thought about what this could mean for your life? For our life?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yes, Mom. It could solve so many of our problems. I could pay all your medical bills. I could finally breathe. But what if it's not real? What if I accept and then find out it was just another disappointment?" Her mother squeezed her hand tightly. "Emily, you've always been a strong woman. If this man is being sincere, maybe this is your chance to finally have the life you deserve. You've always fought so hard. Maybe it's time to accept something that could help you. But in the end, the decision is yours. Only you can know what's best for you." Those words echoed in Emily's mind. She knew her mother was right. Her life had always been a struggle, and maybe it was time to accept help from someone. But the fear was still there, haunting her. After that conversation with her mother, Emily spent the next few days pondering Jacob's offer. She wondered what he saw in her. Why had he chosen her, out of so many others? The thought of being seen as someone worthy of something so grand scared her, but it also touched her. Later that week, she made her decision. She needed to face Jacob and learn more. She couldn't just ignore what was happening, and she knew that, despite her fear, his proposal could be the opportunity she had always wanted. A chance to change her life and her mother's life forever. That weekend, she decided to return to the cafe where she always saw Jacob. Her heart was racing as she waited for him. When Jacob walked into the cafe, she stood up and went straight to him. "Jacob, we need to talk," Emily said firmly. Jacob, both surprised and relieved, nodded. "Of course, Emily, let's sit down." Once they were seated, Emily began. "I've thought a lot about what you said, and I still can't believe someone like you would choose me for something like this. But I need to understand more. Why me? Why not leave your money to a charity or someone closer to you?" Jacob looked at her with a sincerity that caught her off guard. "Because I see something in you that I've never seen in anyone else. You're strong, Emily. You fight every day, yet you don't let it break you. I have no family, no heirs, and I don't want my fortune to go to someone who doesn't understand what it means to face real challenges. I know this may sound strange, but you've given me a reason to believe that my life and my money can have a real purpose. That's why I chose you." Jacob's words hit Emily like a wave of emotions. She didn't know whether to cry or to thank him. What she did know at that moment was that Jacob was being sincere. And for the first time in a long while, Emily felt truly seen, not for her appearance or financial situation, but for who she really was. A strong and resilient woman. The following days were a whirlwind of thoughts for Emily. Jacob's proposal lingered in her mind, and the idea that her life could change so drastically both haunted and intrigued her. Every step at work felt heavier. Every look from the cafe's customers reminded her of the millionaire who had unexpectedly offered her a new reality. But there was one thing Emily needed to make clear. She wasn't willing to be turned into something she wasn't. On the afternoon, she decided to meet Jacob to give him her answer. Emily knew her life stood at a crossroads. She could feel the weight of the decision before her. It wasn't just about accepting financial help. It was a matter of identity. And as tempting as the offer was, Emily knew she had to stand firm. Jacob was already waiting for her at the cafe. He appeared calm, but his eyes showed he was anxious to hear what she had to say. As Emily walked in and approached him, his slight smile disappeared, replaced by a focused expression. He knew her answer could change everything. Emily sat down, looking directly at him. The formalities that had marked their previous conversations had no place here. It was time to speak frankly. Jacob broke the silence first. "I imagine you've given this a lot of thought," he began, his voice lower and more hesitant than usual. "Yes," Emily replied, resolute. "And that's exactly why I'm here. I won't deny it. The proposal you made could change my life. But I want you to know that if I accept, it will be on my terms." Jacob furrowed his brow slightly, but said nothing. He watched her intently, waiting to understand what she really meant. "I've spent my whole life fighting for what's mine, Jacob," Emily continued. "Accepting help has never been easy for me, and now wouldn't be the time for me to accept something that would make me lose the only thing I still have, my freedom. If I'm part of this, I need to know that I'll still be who I am." Jacob listened closely to every word. He had expected that Emily wouldn't simply accept the offer without conditions. He knew she was strong and had principles. That's exactly what had drawn him to her. He didn't see Emily as someone in need of charity, and it was important that she understood that. "I understand," Jacob replied calmly. "I want you to know that what I'm proposing isn't about shaping your life or changing who you are. If change happens, it will be by your choice, not because I impose it. I'm not offering you a life of luxury for luxury's sake, but rather the opportunity to live without the chains that have held you down for so long." Emily looked at him, trying to decipher every word. There was sincerity in what he said, but she still felt the need to protect herself. Accepting this deal would mean leaving behind everything she knew, and that scared her deeply. "You can't expect me to just accept your proposal without question, Jacob. I'm not the kind of person who changes their life for money. If I accept, I'll do it on the condition that I keep my independence, continue my work, and maintain my dignity. I'm not a charity case." Jacob leaned forward slightly, his expression firm. "Emily, I never intended to turn you into something you're not. I chose you because I admire the way you face life's challenges. What I'm offering is a way for you to break free from those hardships, not to redefine you, but to give you the chance to continue being who you are, with more opportunities." Emily listened carefully to Jacob's words and finally realized that he wasn't placing her in a position of inferiority. On the contrary, he was offering her a partnership, an opportunity for both of them to find something that had been missing in their lives. She knew that the money would solve many of her problems, but more than that, she felt that this offer could be a way for her to grow without giving up who she was. "If that's the case," Emily said after a pause, "then I accept. But I want you to understand that, even with this new reality, I will continue being the woman I am. And I will keep working, because that's part of who I am." Jacob smiled softly, this time with more confidence. "That's exactly what I expect from you, Emily." Emily felt a mix of relief and excitement. She knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, she could see the possibility of a different future. And although there was still some fear in her heart, she knew she had made the right choice. Jacob extended his hand, and Emily shook it, sealing the agreement that would change their lives forever. Emily and Jacob's wedding happened in a way few would have imagined. Without opulence, without guests, and without the usual expectations that surround grand events. It was an extremely simple ceremony, with no public records and no grand celebrations. Only 3 people knew of that moment: Emily, Jacob, and her mother. Privacy was essential, and Jacob wanted the commitment to be about them, not what the world expected. That morning, Jacob's mansion garden was quietly prepared. The sky was clear, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees, as if nature itself was giving its silent blessing to the couple. Emily wore a simple white dress with no embellishments. Her hair was loose, blowing in the wind, and her heart raced. She had never imagined her life would take this turn, much less that she would marry under such unusual circumstances. Jacob, on the other hand, stood beside a small table in the center of the garden. His health was visibly fragile, but his eyes gleamed with an unexpected vitality. There was something about that day that gave him strength, and Emily knew that the commitment they were about to make was deeper than just words and rings. As she approached him, she felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, respect, love. Everything seemed to flow naturally, without the formalities that many couples face in large events. There was no audience, no external expectations. It was just Jacob, her, and her mother, watching with a look full of pride and quiet emotion. The justice of the peace, who was there to officiate the union, began the ceremony with simple words. He knew there was no need to prolong the moment. Jacob, always direct, had asked for a brief ceremony without long speeches or extensive promises. For him, the essence of the commitment was what mattered. "Emily," Jacob began, his voice steady though his body was visibly weakened. "Today I'm not just offering you marriage. I'm offering you the last part of myself, something I've never given to anyone else. I know my health is deteriorating, but the time I have, I want to share with you. Not out of obligation, but by choice. You've shown me something I've never found in my entire life: sincerity. And that's why, today, I commit to living by your side, respecting your strength and your courage." Jacob's words touched Emily deeply. She felt a tear well up in her eyes but kept her composure. She knew he was speaking the truth, and it comforted her in a way she had never experienced before. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and looked directly into Jacob's eyes. "Jacob, from the start, you gave me something few people understand: respect. Not for what you have, but for who you are. Today, I'm not accepting this union just as a formal commitment. I'm accepting it because, by your side, I've found a place where I can be myself without fear of judgment. And for that, I commit to being by your side, for however much time we have together." After Emily's words, the justice of the peace concluded the ceremony with a simple gesture. Jacob and Emily exchanged rings, simple bands, but for them, they represented much more than a symbol of union. When the justice declared them husband and wife, there were no applause or loud celebrations, only the soft sound of the wind and the silent looks that conveyed more than words ever could. Jacob, smiling for the first time in a long while, held Emily's hand and gently pulled her closer. "Now we're officially partners," he whispered as they walked away from the table and headed toward the house. Emily's mother, watching from afar, couldn't hold back her tears, though she knew this was the best thing for her daughter. She knew that Emily had found someone who respected her and would do everything to ensure her well-being. The first days after the wedding were full of adjustments. The life they had decided to share was just beginning, but both knew the challenges didn't end there. Jacob, aware of his increasingly frail health, made sure that Emily had control over her new life. He respected her decision to continue working at the cafe and didn't push her to live differently. However, something neither of them could control were the stares and rumors that started after the wedding. Although the event had been kept secret, Jacob's behavior alongside Emily didn't go unnoticed by those who frequented the cafe. Emily's change in routine was soon noticed by the most curious customers. "She married him, didn't she? It's obvious," some murmured. "Who would have guessed? A cafe worker, now married to a millionaire. What did she see in him? Or maybe it's the other way around." Others whispered, not bothering to hide the malice in their words. Emily heard the comments but tried to remain calm. Even though she had prepared herself for the criticism, the sting of the harsh words still affected her. She knew her marriage to Jacob wouldn't be easily understood by many, but even so, she stood firm in her decision. One afternoon, after a particularly tough day at the cafe, Emily arrived at Jacob's mansion feeling exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Jacob, who was sitting in his office chair, noticed the tension on her face as soon as she walked in. Without a word, he extended his hand, inviting her to sit beside him. "Rough day?" he asked softly, already knowing the answer. Emily nodded, taking the cup of tea Jacob had prepared for her. "People are talking, a lot. They look at me differently, as if everything I've done was just for your money." Jacob sighed, his expression softening. "I'm sorry, Emily. I knew this would happen, but that doesn't make their words hurt any less. I know those people don't matter, but sometimes it feels like all my hard work, everything I've done for myself, is being thrown away because of what they think," Emily said, her voice heavy with frustration. Jacob held her hand tightly, his voice more firm now. "You know that's not true. I know who you are, and the people who matter know it too. The rest is just noise. Don't let it make you doubt who you are or what we're building." With those words, Emily found some relief. She knew that walking this path with Jacob would be full of challenges, but she was willing to face each one. And in that moment, she understood that, despite all the difficulties, she had found something rare: a partnership built on respect, trust, and truth. For Emily, the marriage represented much more than her union with Jacob. It was a daily battle against the judgments and prejudices that had only intensified since people began to suspect their relationship. At the cafe, the gossip didn't stop. Every day, the comments seemed to grow more cruel and relentless, as if people felt entitled to have an opinion about her life. Emily, who had always faced everything with her head held high, now felt the weight of public scrutiny with every move she made. She can't be doing this for love. Who marries a man so much older and sick? No less. Emily overheard one customer whisper to another while she served coffee. Another day, an old customer, who used to be friendly, made a sarcastic remark as he paid his bill. "So, now you're the millionaire's wife, huh? Must be enjoying the high life." Those words, seemingly trivial, started to affect Emily more deeply than she wanted to admit. Even though she knew other people's opinions didn't matter, it was hard to ignore the judgmental stares that followed her everywhere. The cafe, which once felt like her refuge, now felt suffocating. Jacob, for his part, began to notice that the emotional strain was affecting Emily, even though she tried to hide it. Already fighting his own battle with illness, he felt powerless to protect her completely from the outside world. His support was constant, but Jacob knew there were some battles Emily would have to face on her own. One evening, after returning from work, Emily sat in the living room with Jacob, feeling drained. She was tired of the insinuations and invasive questions. The silence between them was comforting, but it was also filled with unspoken tension. Jacob sensed that it was time to address what had been lingering for days. "Emily, you know you can talk to me, don't you?" Jacob broke the silence, his voice gentle but filled with concern. Emily sighed deeply, staring at the floor for a moment before lifting her eyes to meet his. "I know, Jacob. It's just that everything feels different now. People see me in a way I never thought they would. And the worst part is, I'm starting to doubt myself. What if, in some way, they're right?" Jacob immediately leaned forward, his expression serious. "They're not right, Emily. Not even close. You made this commitment for your own reasons, and no one else has the right to question them. Those people, they don't know who you really are. They only see what they want to see." "But it's getting hard, Jacob," she confessed, her voice finally breaking. "I didn't care what others thought before. But now, it feels like I'm carrying the weight of everyone's opinion on my shoulders." Jacob took her hands, squeezing them firmly, his expression sincere. "You're stronger than that, Emily, and what we're building is real. Don't let that noise make you doubt who you are or what we're doing together. I see your struggle, and I admire you for it." Jacob's words provided some comfort, but Emily knew that, deep down, what troubled her most wasn't just what others were saying, but the doubts she was beginning to feel herself. She knew that marrying Jacob would put her in a difficult position, but she hadn't expected it to make her question her own identity. That same night, while Jacob rested, Emily walked through the mansion's garden, trying to find some relief in the fresh night air. The sky was filled with stars, and the silence around her felt like a welcome pause after such tumultuous days. She reflected on everything that had happened since the wedding. As much as she wanted to believe that the criticism and cruel looks didn't matter, they were slowly eating away at her from within. Emily felt an increasing pressure. The the responsibility to meet Jacob's expectations, to face society's judgment, and at the same time to not lose her own essence. She knew that Jacob trusted her, that he saw her as a true partner, and that motivated her to keep fighting. But deep down, she questioned if she could withstand the rising tide of prejudice and challenges that seemed to grow each day. Yet, despite her doubts, something inside Emily remained steady. She knew that with Jacob, she had found a rare connection, something that transcended their circumstances and the limited time they had together. It was this certainty that kept her grounded, despite all the obstacles. The days that followed were a mix of highs and lows. Every day, Emily tried to find her balance between working at the cafe and her life with Jacob. The criticisms continued, but she forced herself to ignore them. Jacob, on the other hand, began facing new health complications, something he tried to hide from Emily as much as possible. He knew his time was running out, and the thought of leaving Emily alone consumed him more and more. As both their internal and external battles intensified, they realized that the true test of their union was only just beginning. What they would face together in the days and months to come would challenge the limits of their love, strength, and endurance. But amidst all of this, one certainty grew. No matter how difficult the circumstances, Emily and Jacob were determined to make every moment they had left together count. And in the end, that was all that really mattered. As the days passed, Jacob's health began to deteriorate more noticeably. The vigor he once showed in trying to maintain a normal life was fading quickly. Emily, who had mentally prepared herself for this reality from the start, began to realize that the time they had together would be shorter than she had imagined. Despite this, she remained composed, determined to support Jacob in the best way she could. The mansion, once quiet and serene, now saw more frequent visits from doctors. Jacob, though proud, knew his strength was slipping away, but he never let on just how serious his condition had become. He wanted the remaining days to be about peace and connection, not the illness that was slowly consuming him. One morning, Jacob woke up in intense pain, forcing him to stay in bed longer than usual. Emily, who was by his side, immediately sensed that this would be a harder day than the ones before. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she held his hand gently, as if trying to transmit some strength through her touch. "You look tired," she said softly, her eyes searching for some reassurance to ease her worries. Jacob smiled faintly. "I think my body is finally giving me the warning I've been ignoring for a long time." Emily leaned in, her heart heavy. "You don't have to fight alone anymore, Jacob. I'm here, and I'll be with you until the end." Emily's words sounded like a silent promise. She knew the days ahead would test not only him, but also herself, as she would need to be the rock that held everything together. It was a challenge she had never expected to face, but somehow she felt ready for it. Jacob, grateful for Emily's support, carried a burden he didn't want to share. He knew the end was approaching faster than expected, and the thought of leaving her alone tormented him. He had fought to build something with Emily, and now, with time running out, he felt it hadn't been enough. That afternoon, while Jacob rested, Emily walked through the mansion's gardens, as she often did when she needed to clear her mind. The fresh breeze and the sound of rustling leaves helped calm her spirit, but her mind remained restless. Doubt, fear, and the pain of losing Jacob were emotions she tried to hide, but they grew stronger every day. That same afternoon, Jacob, who had asked to be left alone for a few minutes, wrote a letter. He knew he wouldn't be able to express everything he felt directly to Emily, but he needed her to know how much her presence had transformed his final days. Even in the midst of pain, he wanted her to know that she had been his greatest strength. When Emily returned to the house, Jacob's expression had changed. Though still fragile, there was a glow in his eyes, as if he had made peace with what was to come. "Emily," he began with difficulty, "there's something I need to tell you." She came closer, sitting beside him. "What is it, Jacob?" "You brought something into my life that I never found before. And I'm not talking about love in a romantic sense, but a type of companionship I didn't even know I needed. And for that, I want you to know that when I'm gone, everything I've built will be yours. It's not about the money or the possessions. It's about leaving something for someone who made every one of my final days worthwhile." Emily felt the tears forming but tried to keep her composure. She knew this moment was coming, but hearing Jacob talk about a future without him was devastating. "Jacob, you don't have to talk about this now. We still have time." He shook his head with a soft smile. "Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but it's important that you know. You changed my life in a way I could never repay." Jacob handed her the letter he had written earlier. "This letter is for you. When I'm gone, I want you to read it. It will say everything I couldn't express in words here." Emily held the letter carefully, feeling the symbolic weight it carried. She knew the moment she dreaded was drawing nearer, but she also knew that Jacob was at peace with what was to come. In the days that followed, Jacob spent most of his time in bed, and Emily remained by his side, holding his hand, reading to him, and trying to make his last moments as comfortable as possible. The doctor's visits became more frequent, but Emily knew that, at this point, what Jacob needed most wasn't medical care, but companionship. And then one quiet afternoon, under the soft sunlight that filled Jacob's room, he passed away. There was no intense pain, no prolonged suffering. He simply closed his eyes and let the exhaustion finally take him. Emily was by his side, holding his hand until the very end. The silence that followed was deep and heavy. The pain of loss enveloped Emily like a wave, but at the same time, there was a sense of peace. She knew she had done everything she could, that she had been with Jacob until the end, and that he had passed in peace, knowing he was loved and respected. Jacob's funeral was quiet, just as he had wanted. Few people attended. Emily made sure it was a private event, away from the curious eyes and gossip that had always surrounded their relationship. Alongside her mother and a few of Jacob's closest staff, Emily said her goodbyes in a silent, intimate manner. There was a solemn acceptance that Jacob had lived his final days the way he wanted, honestly and with someone who respected him for who he truly was. That night, alone in the room she once shared with Jacob, Emily finally opened the letter. His words, written with such care, touched her heart in ways she hadn't expected. Jacob hadn't just left behind a material legacy. He had left an emotional one, a reminder that she was strong, resilient, and capable of facing whatever challenges life would bring. After the funeral, the reality of Emily's new life began to unfold. As the heir to a considerable fortune, she now faced decisions and responsibilities she had never imagined. The bank accounts, properties, stocks, all of it was now in her name. But Jacob's legacy wasn't just financial. He had entrusted her with something far more important: control over her own destiny. Even with the fresh pain of loss, Emily knew she couldn't remain idle. The cafe, once her refuge, now seemed distant from her new reality. Returning to work wouldn't be the same. People knew she had inherited Jacob's fortune, and the once hidden glances had become open and judgmental. "So now she's rich," some would say, not even bothering to whisper, "I bet she won't need to work like us anymore." These comments no longer surprised her. Emily had prepared herself for the wave of envy and judgment, but what bothered her most was the feeling that, somehow, people believed she had won something without fighting for it. What they didn't know was the price she had paid: the loss of Jacob, a man she deeply respected, and the emotional burden she carried every day. Determined to honor Jacob's legacy in a meaningful way, Emily decided she wouldn't let the criticism or judgments define her. She knew she held power in her hands, not just financial power, but the ability to do something significant with all that Jacob had left her. And above all, she knew she could use that strength to help others who, like her, had faced hardships and prejudice. Without delay, Emily began searching for ways to turn Jacob's fortune into something that could truly impact lives. She remembered how Jacob spoke about the struggles people faced in finding dignity amid hardships, something he saw as essential to human well-being. Inspired by his vision, Emily started planning what would become a major project: a foundation in Jacob's name, dedicated to supporting social causes, helping those facing prejudice, and providing opportunities to people who might otherwise never have them. The first steps in creating the foundation were challenging. Emily, who had spent most of her life far from the world of business, now found herself surrounded by lawyers, accountants, and advisors, helping her understand what it meant to manage a fortune. However, each meeting, each decision, brought with it memories of Jacob and the desire to do something he would be proud to see. Over the weeks, the Jacob Miller Foundation began to take shape. The goal was clear: to offer scholarships, fund small entrepreneurs, and create programs to empower people from humble backgrounds. Emily wanted Jacob's money to be used to create real, lasting change, something that reflected the way he had transformed both his life and hers. But while Emily worked on building the foundation, the pain of losing Jacob was a constant presence. Often, in the quiet of the mansion, she would find herself sitting in the chair where Jacob used to rest, feeling his absence almost physically. The letter he had left her was kept in a special place, and although she had read it already, she would often reread it in moments of longing. Jacob's words, written with such care, echoed in Emily's mind. "You showed me the true meaning of partnership. It's not about how much time we have, but about what we do with that time. Life is short, but you gave me something eternal. The certainty that, by your side, I found peace." Those words guided her in every decision, in each new step in building the foundation. Emily knew that what they had built together was something much larger than any fortune. It was a legacy that would live far beyond both of them. As the months passed, the foundation gained recognition and began impacting lives in ways Emily couldn't have imagined. People from different parts of the country began benefiting from the programs, and Jacob's vision for a fairer, more dignified world was finally coming to life. Emily knew that, even though he was no longer physically by her side, his spirit and influence remained in everything she did. However, even with the foundation's success, there was something Emily still had to face: grief. She had thrown herself into the work to cope with the loss, but she knew that eventually she would have to confront the pain and the longing for Jacob on a deeper level. And it was one night, months after his death, that this reality hit her hard. Sitting in the mansion's garden, under the same starry sky that had witnessed so many conversations and moments with Jacob, Emily finally allowed herself to cry. The pain she had been holding back for so long finally surfaced, and she let herself feel the full weight of the sadness and emptiness his absence left behind. But in the midst of the tears, there was also a sense of gratitude. She knew that the time they had spent together had been brief, but she also knew that their love, their partnership, had transformed both of their lives. Jacob had given her not just a financial inheritance, but a purpose. And because of that, Emily knew that, no matter how difficult it was to move forward, she would continue to honor his memory in everything she did. That night, as the stars sparkled in the sky and a gentle breeze swept through the garden, Emily closed her eyes and made a silent promise to herself. She would keep living, keep fighting, and make every moment count, because that's what Jacob would have wanted. As much as she tried to focus on the foundation, Emily knew she needed something more, something that would help her turn the page and live for herself, not just for Jacob's legacy. But before she could move forward, she would have to face her grief head-on. One evening, while going through some of Jacob's belongings, she found an old key in an envelope. The paper had his name written simply, with a short message beside it: "For when you're ready." Intrigued, Emily stared at the key for a few minutes, trying to grasp its meaning. There was no explanation, only a sense that it held more significance than she realized. The next day, after a meeting with Jacob's lawyer, she discovered that the key belonged to a secret property, a small country house he had never mentioned to anyone, not even to her. The discovery shook Emily in ways she hadn't expected. Why would Jacob have kept this from her? What was the purpose of the house? The mystery consumed her, and she knew she couldn't rest until she found the answers. Determined, Emily went to the property. The house was in a secluded area, surrounded by tall trees, with a river running beside it. When she arrived, she was overwhelmed with emotion. The place was small, but had a peaceful, welcoming beauty. It seemed like something Jacob would have cherished in secret, far from the chaos of the city and business. As she stepped inside, a whirlwind of emotions engulfed her. The walls, decorated with old photos, revealed a side of Jacob she had never known. Here, he seemed younger, free of responsibilities. Some of the photos showed a smiling Jacob, alongside friends Emily had never heard of. And then, on one of the shelves, she found something that took her breath away. A letter addressed to her. With trembling hands, Emily opened the envelope. Jacob's words were direct, yet filled with emotion. "Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm already gone. There are so many things I wish I had said but didn't have the courage to while I was alive. This house is my final gift to you. Here I found the peace I searched for all my life. I didn't want to involve you in it before because I knew you needed to find your own path. But now this house is yours. It's a place for you to breathe, to remember that life goes on even after loss. Here, I want you to know it's okay to move forward. It's okay to live fully, without carrying the guilt of my absence." The tears finally came. Emily read and reread the letter, feeling the depth of every word. Jacob knew she would need time to heal, and somehow he had anticipated that this would be the place where she could begin to do so. The small country house, hidden from the world, was not just a retreat. It was a place where she could reconnect with herself. In the days that followed, Emily returned to the house many times. There, sitting by the river, she began to feel something she hadn't in months: peace. Each visit seemed to wash away a little more of the pain, as if Jacob was still there in spirit, helping her move forward. The foundation continued to grow, but now Emily was determined to expand its impact in a more personal way. Inspired by her new discovery, she created a special retreat program for young people dealing with grief and emotional struggles. She knew better than anyone how hard it was to process loss and pain, and wanted others to find the same kind of healing she was beginning to experience. During a charity event for the foundation where Emily presented her new program, she was approached by a young woman named Sarah, one of the first beneficiaries of the project. Sarah, visibly emotional, shared her story. "I lost my parents 2 years ago, and I never knew how to deal with the pain. I was lost, with no direction, until I found the retreat you created. Those days were transformative for me. I felt a peace I hadn't known since they passed. Thank you, Emily. What you're doing is saving lives." Sarah's words made Emily realize something profound. Jacob's legacy wasn't just hers. It had spread and touched other lives in ways she couldn't have imagined. The foundation wasn't just a tribute to him, but a way to continue impacting the world and helping those most in need. Despite the foundation's success and growth, Emily knew the key to her happiness lay in balancing the past with the future. Selling Jacob's mansion was a difficult, but necessary decision. She felt that by letting go of the grand property, she was finally allowing life to take its natural course. With the money from the sale, Emily expanded the foundation's reach even further, creating support centers for underserved communities and offering resources to people facing struggles similar to those she and Jacob had experienced. Every new project seemed to renew her sense of purpose. The country house, however, became her true home. It wasn't a luxurious mansion, but for Emily, it was the place where she finally found herself. She had overcome the doubts, the judgments, and the grief. And while Jacob was always present in her memory, Emily knew he had prepared her for something greater, to live fully, without regrets, knowing she had fulfilled the purpose they had built together. One afternoon, as she watched the sunset from the porch of the house, Emily smiled to herself, feeling a lightness in her heart she hadn't felt in a long time. The gentle breeze gave her the sense that Jacob, in some way, was there with her, watching everything she had achieved. And so, as the shadows of night began to lengthen, Emily realized that her new chapter was just beginning. She had so much more to live for, and Jacob had been just the start of a much bigger journey. What do you think? Did Emily make the right choice by marrying Jacob? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. Your participation is really important to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Thank you for watching.